Colonel, I'm going to obviously come to you on this. I don't think that America has yet to figure out an effective way, of course, to deal with North Korea. What do these sanctions mean through your lens?
Nothing. Won't work. Ain't going to happen. But we've had Democrats, Republicans, two-term said ever do North Korea. North Korea is still pariah. Yeah. This guy's wackier than the rest of them have been. Very, very dangerous intercontinental missiles. And they've blown up a nuke, I think, 4 times.
Yes.
The issue is not going to be sanctions. It's that Seoul, Korea and Tokyo are held hostage by North Koreans' aggression. And our military options, although we could win, are very, very limited because of the millions of casualties you'd have in a war with them.
Can I follow up? And I'm going to get you in one second, Crystal. What do those military options look like from your point of view?
Disaster. They've got a 136-mile-wide demilitarized zone. There's 155,000 pieces of artillery. Seoul is only 30 miles away. And if we do a fast strike, they still get 6 to 8 minutes warning. North Koreans.
So then what options does the United States have? Because if you're saying that sanctions don't work, so putting that economic pressure on North Korea doesn't work, and now you're saying that the military options, which we all know are bad, and there aren't a lot of good military options, what does that leave? Where does that leave the United States then?
There's only one road into North Korea. It's China. And the good news is, new administration's got the Chinese to actually say something aggressively about sanctions. That's a good news thing. But China is the only option. There is no, I'm just saying it's too hard a road militarily. We could win it, but it'd be millions of casualties, civilian casualties.
Crystal, speaking of China, many Americans have felt hopeful that that would be the primary way that we can win this looks like impending battle and war really against North Korea. Do you think they are at all serious? Because it looks like they've hesitated and kind of played chicken on this issue thus far with the U.S.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I can get inside their minds, but I think this is a positive step forward, this UN Security Council resolution. I think it does indicate that everybody's on the same page. I think we have to give UN Ambassador Nikki Haley a lot of credit here. She has in a lot of ways been empowered to sort of walk a different line than what the administration has publicly said. I mean, the president came in with this very go-it-alone approach, and she's done a lot of work laying the groundwork there. And we see, even though I'm like you all, I don't have a lot of hope that these sanctions are actually going to have any effect, because this is a regime that has shown a willingness to let their people literally starve and die than chart a different course. But I do think that this is an important first step to at least have everybody on the same page, and maybe China steps up, because that is the only path probably to avoiding some sort of disastrous military conflict.
Kat, let me ask you this. When we talk about a world coalition being required, all right, this is not something the U.S. can do alone. Clearly, we're all getting a clear picture of that. The likelihood, you think, of Ambassador Nikki Haley and her ability to get buy-in internationally around treating North Korea like the critical problem and imminent threat internationally that it is?
Well, it all comes down to when it becomes to be something in those countries' own best interest. In terms of tension between the United States and North Korea, China loves that. They love to see us squirm. They love to see us having those issues. Well, they get to benefit economically, but they don't want war. That would be worse for them than it would be for us because of the refugee crisis and all sorts of other issues that would be created by having a power vacuum in North Korea. So it's all about showing them how it's in their best interests to actually cooperate with this serious problem.
But, Crystal, to you real quick, so you said that President Trump has been trying to go it alone. We know for a long time and throughout the duration of his presidency so far, he's tried to work with China and trying to enlist China as a partner in interactions against North Korea and trying to get them to back off a little bit. So how can you say that he wants to go it alone when we actually have seen him put a lot of effort in building that relationship?
Sure. Well, it's a little ironic to see him touting progress made at the United Nations.
But you just
when
said
I don't
progress
think that
was made.
United Nations is an institution that the, say, Bannon wing of the party particularly tends to celebrate.
Is that what you're pointing out, how Nikki Haley's kind of able to make a distinction?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So this is the ultimate sort of globalist, internationalist organization, right? This is, the UN is what people, again, in the Bannon wing always sort of rail against and want us out of the UN. This really underscores how it is important when you are facing a global crisis, which is what this is with North Korea, that we do have our friends and allies at the table. So again, I give him credit for that. I give Nikki Haley credit for really working on that ground. But I think this underscores we are not able to go it alone in the world. We need our friends and our allies. Those relationships are important, and they can't just be bilateral relationships. We need that global view.
And earlier today, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told reporters in Manila that if North Korea Korea wants to engage in talks with the U.S., it must first stop launching missiles. And just a short time ago, U.S. officials told Fox News that American spy satellites detected North Korea moving anti-ship cruise missiles to a patrol boat off the country's east coast. As for how long a military moratorium would have to last to be taken as a signal, Tillerson said, "We'll know it when we see it." To this, Colonel, I mean, obviously that's a good start, right? Them stopping the consistent and almost rivied up launching of missiles to show some, I don't know, good faith on their part?
I'm just troubled by the leaks. Look, we just told the North Koreans what time a satellite goes over and what size boat it can look at. Tillerson's a good guy. Rich, and a lot of people that work for him. The issue is North Korea is almost an impossible nut to crack because they know what I just said. That yes, there's a seems to be a united front, United Nations, but there are very, very limited options that the world can put more onto them, and everyone jumps to the military option, and the Secretary of State just took all the negotiations off the table. You have to stop doing this, or we'll do that, and nobody expects. And I'm clearly not a politician, but nobody expects North Korea to go, oh, well, if the Secretary of State says that, we're going to stop shooting missiles.
Well, that's fair, Cap. But ultimately, can we even engage? You go to the table to negotiate with people that are actively still testing missiles that we now know can hit the United States of America.
Absolutely. But to your point also, it's important to remember that in North Korea, although these people are being oppressed by this horrible dictator, that what they're seeing in the state-controlled media is that we're the bad guys, that they need these missiles, that they need these nuclear weapons because we're going to go after North Korea, and we're this big, looming, scary threat. So that's an important thing to remember. And it's also, you know, all of these threats coming out and saying, we're going to get you, blah, blah. We could have expected this. As soon as we signed these sanctions, we could have said, okay, they're going to come out and say, we're going to kill a bunch of Americans. That's to be expected. You can't expect them to say, oh, there's sanctions on us. Okay, well, that's cool. Well, now we're scared and we're going to stop. So it's important to kind of remember that they're going to retaliate, that they're going to say these things, and that people in North Korea don't see things the way that is happening in reality because they're not allowed to.
No, Crystal, they don't see them in North Korea that way.
Right.
But again, the global buy-in component, do you think what Rex Tillerson is articulating here is important and powerful?
I am skeptical also that any of this is going to have an impact. Now, I think you have to do it, right? I think you have to take these steps. I think you have to try. But is it ultimately going to be successful? No. I want to say I'm really glad that you're focusing this important first block of your show on this issue because this is an incredibly scary moment. We've had lots of sort of missile scares and tests with North Korea. I think it's easy to feel like, oh, this is just another thing. We've seen this in the past. Nothing's actually happened.
But it feels like it's
incredibly
You mean the revenge
significant.
Thing? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, the missile tests and the question around what are we going to be doing about North Korea. This is an incredibly significant and frightening development. It is the first real crisis that this administration has faced.
Okay, that's fair for the first 6 months, but the North Koreans blow up 2 nukes on the Bush 43. That's clearly was a higher problem than the missiles. The missile issue, by the way, everyone keeps saying as soon as they punch a missile up, it's going to hit New York City. That's just not true. That's an opinion within the intelligence community. It's dangerous. North Korea is dangerous. But my only pushback is when this country and North Korea blew up nukes on the ground, that was a lot more critical than what we're having right now.
But being able to reach the United States is a whole new level. I hope you're right.
All I'm just saying is it's very convenient every time they punch one up, they say it's going to reach Seattle or it's going to reach New York. The danger is whether they can put a nuke on top of a missile, period, and still reach Seoul and Tokyo.
So are we seeing that this is just a rhetorical revving up of North Korea's North Korea's abilities, Colonel? Is that what I hear you?
No, they've got real capabilities.
Okay.
No question. No, that might minimize North Korea's capabilities.
Right.
It's the frustration with how you're going to get at it.
Fair enough. On Sunday, China called on North Korea to halt its missile and nuclear test. The support from China is a welcome boost since they are typically North Korea's economic lifeline. The Trump administration cautiously embraced China's apparent newfound cooperation while putting it on notice that the U.S. would be watching closely to ensure it didn't ease up on North Korea if and when the world's attention is diverted elsewhere. I think this is important, Lisa, because we remember the meeting between China's president and President Trump, and everybody felt like optimistic something was going to come, and it seems like they disappeared on that one.
Well, and we saw a little bit of hope with the turning away of coal ships. And China is the economic lifeline for North Korea. 90% of its trade has to do with China. So the question is, how do we engage China? And the question for China is this in their interest? And so my question to the Colonel Do you think, is it in China's interest to work with the United States in trying to deter North Korea?
Yeah, I mean, everyone, yes, the answer is yes. It's called trillions of dollars. The trade issue between China and the U.S. is staggering. It's not just a one-way street. They need us, and we've got serious economic pressure we can put on China, and this administration seems to understand that. And we do have the Chinese coming forward, which is a big step.
Let me ask you this, Colonel. How far do you think President Trump and his administration will go around incentivizing economically China's cooperation? Because from where I'm sitting, Colonel, it doesn't seem like China's just going to decide it's in their best interest because we all feel like it is. It seems like it has to be clearly incentivized.
I think that it remains to be seen whether the businessman, now president, can execute that kind of negotiations. We don't know that yet.
But I think one thing that's important to point out, too, I don't think anyone in the Trump administration is saying that this is the answer, that this UN resolution or even looking at sanctions is the answer against North Korea. I think what they're trying to do is exactly what President Trump said, maximum pressure. So what they're looking to do is to try to look at any avenue that we have to try to press or to try to push and put pressure on North Korea, and this is certainly part of that.
Can I ask you this, Lisa? Do you think President Trump and his administration will be willing to threaten that trade, that all-important economic trade that we do so much of with China, to make that point? Is that included in how far he will go?
I do. I absolutely do. I think President Trump has even said things along those lines in the past. So, yes, absolutely.
But we know he said it, Kat. But, again, sometimes that's different than what he actually does, right?
Sometimes he'll say one thing, do
not
another,
in politics.
say one thing.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
That's not the way it works.
Right. Well, but this is obviously a good sign, and this is really the only way that we could get to this problem without killing millions of people. This is a very, very serious thing, and although you can get scared by some of the rhetoric coming out of North Korea, and of course their actual capabilities getting to be more and more capable, military option is also just not an option in my mind, because it results in millions upon millions of innocent people being dead.
It is technically an option, though, Crystal, although nobody wants to see civilians dead.
It's a frightening option, and, you know, if we continue down this path, I think we could very well be headed there.
Yeah, I just think the timeline, Colonel, looks like it's narrowing in terms of what our options are.
I don't think his military advisors, like the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense, are going to allow that. That's my hope.
Hopefully it doesn't get there. Absolutely.
Guys have been to war. They don't want another one.